Okay. Everyone, I would like to welcome you to Must Learn Thursdays with the Natural History Society. And my name is Elena Takaki. I am a board member on the Natural History Society of Maryland, and it's my pleasure to host you for the evening. Our guest today is Kim Abplanalp, and she is Maryland Coastal Bay's Bird Habitat Coordinator, and she's in charge of bird habitat restoration, water bird monitoring. Oh, sorry, I lost my screen. Water bird monitoring and the artificial breeding habitat project, the Tern Raft. She has presented at the Waterbird Society meeting and Pacific Seabird Group, as well as other bird organizations, and she serves as the Tern Raft photographer for Audubon Mid-Atlantic. And with that, Kim, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Super. So my name, as Elena said, thank you for that introduction. My name is Kim Abplanalp, and Build an Island, Terns Will Come is a joint project between Maryland Department of Natural Resources, Maryland Coastal Bays, and Audubon Mid-Atlantic. So Maryland Coastal Bays program is one of the 28 national estuary programs across the United States deemed most critical, supported by the EPA under the Clean Water Act. My charge, or our charge, is these 5 bays up in the upper right-hand corner, and I'll circle them. Assawoman is up near the Delaware line. Isle of Wight is in the northern part of our county, Worcester. We're at Worcester, and then Chincoteague Bay runs along behind Ocean City, Newport Bay below, in the backside, like right here, and then all of this is Chincoteague Bay. Our raft is right around here where my pointer is right now. 75% of Chincoteague Bay actually resides in Maryland, and only 25% in Chincoteague. So our raft sits right here in the middle of Chincoteague Bay. So historically, we have 3 state-listed endangered water birds nesting in Maryland coastal bays. That's the common tern, the royal tern down here, and the black skimmer. Historically, this is a graph that shows historically the 3 species from just 20 years ago. The common tern had 520 nesting breeding pairs, and by 2020 we were down to less than 35. In royal terns, we had about 500 pairs, and in 2020 we had 0 pairs. Black skimmers, traditionally 100 pairs. It was never a real stronghold for Maryland, but we had them, and 100 pairs is still something. And for quite a few years now, we've had 0 nesting in Maryland coastal bays waters. Now, common tern at the top here is what I'm going to focus on because that's what the raft is targeting. And I would say back 20 years ago, it was 520 pairs, but 40 years ago, it had 1,000 pairs, just to give you a perspective. And the reason is loss of nesting habitat. So the erosion of sand islands because of sea level rise, the severity of storms, and the frequency of storms. This photo on the left shows Mark 12. It was built by Dredge Materials, formerly an island, had whittled down to nothing, and then we put dredge material on here. It was built in 2014. By 2017, which this photo shows, it had full vegetation, both naturally and planted. But 5 years later, this was it. On the right here is Chincoteague Island, some of you will recognize. And one of the big changes in the inland bays was the creation of the Ocean City Inlet in 1933. That was a big storm that came through and broke the cycle of breaching replenishment. And how that worked was, here's Chincoteague Island. Let's say you have a storm that comes in and breaches through here. So it would break through, and a bunch of sand would roll in, a lot of seawater, sand with it, materials, and it would collect in here. And then this breach would seal up again. And so all of that sand that was accumulated in here it was more or less trapped. So it had nowhere to go, and it would create these islands that would constantly on a cycle replenish themselves. Once we hardened a breach of 1933, where it broke through at the base of Ocean City, and they decided to make it hard and harden that, which brings in economic, value. The fishermen were able to get in and out of the island. I mean, out of the inlet, which is good for them. So there's, lots of pros and cons, but for water birds and for island nesting birds, it really created this break in the cycle that replenished the islands naturally. The other reasons is predation. Even though island birds don't tend to have fox on them, when the islands are really close to the mainland, they will swim out, or raccoons will swim out, and then they'll be predators against the eggs in particular. The other thing is human disturbance. Down on the bottom here, I show an island, and this island, actually, you can see the new planting on the bottom here. This island was actually marked off as a wildlife area, and yet you still see people ignoring those rules. So that's a big problem sometimes, particularly down here. But I would say more than anything, it's sea level rise. Here's the erosion of islands. So this is an example of 2010. This is called Skimmer Island. It's right at the base of Route 50 coming into Ocean City. The photo on your left here, sometimes you'll see Skimmer Island, little glimpses of it. But this photo on the left is actually, this Google Earth image is pretty far away. In the sense that this was green vegetation on Skimmer Island, which you don't see at all anymore. This was green vegetation. And then up here in these two areas also had quite a lot of green vegetation, which we had everything from common terns, black skimmers, royal terns. We had egrets, glossy ibis. There was historically, lots of different varieties of water birds. So this was 2010. Again, that was rebuilt back in those years with dredge material. It created vegetation, and then here we are, 2021, and this is sometimes just what you see. In the fall, we often will get a little bit more sandbar showing, and then it still serves as a great rest stop for migrating birds. They really collect there because they're safer on an island than they would be on land. Even Chincoteague Island has many more predators than an island in the middle of the bay. But so it still serves as a value, but it's not a breeding island anymore. So as a short-term solution, we built an artificial breeding raft. This is the Tern Raft, and it's in the middle of Chincoteague Bay. We started out by, actually, you can't see these guys, but these are two local guys who were great master wood carpenters. And then up here on the right is TS Ironworks. We commissioned them to make these custom-made, self-made connecting latches, and they just migrate to one another and then have this ability to really move and flex, which you'll see in a moment makes a very big difference in this design. On the left here, we have wheeled dock floats, and there are 9 dock floats on this raft. 6 of them are wheeled, and then the 3 in the middle are not. Then we put a wood on top of this, a wood frame base on top of it. And on the right here, you see that that's one little section. It's 8 by 16, and it's designed that size so that it could roll down a boat ramp. So here in the upper left-hand side, we use rollbacks to transport the rafts that are stored at a friend of ours' property that lives right next to the South Point boat ramp. We roll it down the rollback and into the boat slip, and it immediately becomes a floating vessel here on the right, top right. Then we put two of them together with these metal, these are galvanized plates. Almost everything on our raft is stainless steel, except for these plates and a few other things that aren't necessary to have stainless steel. But for the most part, all the bolts I use are stainless steel. Then we use a substrate. We used crushed clamshell as substrate. A lot of times people will ask, well, why didn't you use sand? And sand would just blow away with the conditions out there in the middle of the bay. So it's a little bit different. So here is the substrate being put on. And then we put the two together and we tow them out 2.4 miles away to our site. So what we end up having is two 8x16 sections over here. Two of these are put together with this plate, becomes a 16x16 section. And then we put 9 of them together. So, and that we use those latches I showed you so that they have the ability to flex and articulate. And the final touches are we put this carpet on in between those seams so that the babies can't fall through. We put a parapet, a wall around the outside edge of the Tern Raft. And that's so, again, the babies don't fall off. Here's the baby up here. This guy is about 2 days old. So the first year we made a small raft. It was just 32 by 32. I mean, it was still 1,000 square feet. But this is in red here. You'll see the 2021 design. And we had 23 nests that year. We got it in a little bit late because of permitting, but because we were successful, we decided to go ahead and just immediately expand the raft into 48 by 48. So we took these 4 sections over here on the left because they were already set up for anchors and that design. So we took them out to the 4 corners in the yellow here and then added the 5 new sections the following year. So we enlarged it from 4 sections to 9, and now it's 48 by 48 or 2,300 square feet, which is pretty good size. It's also 34 tons or 68,000 pounds. On the left here is a aerial view from our drone. It doesn't have all the plants we have on it. This was like the first day after we put it in. And then same here, this picture is just slightly premature. It's probably the first day we set up, but we have a lot more plants and a lot more chick houses now. And here is why. Here's those latches that we're using. So on the left here, first, I'll show you, here's the raft. We have 4 anchors and we have 4 running lights because at night we need it to be a navigational vessel. And then here in the middle, I show a plow anchor. That's real key because these, Dave Brinker, who I work with DNR, really did a great job at researching anchors. And this anchor in particularly, when it has a lot of tension, it invests itself even greater. So it dives down, straight down, and just digs into the sand. And you can see here, this raft isn't going anywhere, but it is give and taking with that storm. These are Tropical Storm Elsa in 2021. That's the one up top here. And this is the smaller raft up here, so you can really see how they flex. Then with the bigger raft down here for that nor'easter that went up to 50 miles per hour too, you can see that the extra weight of the raft makes it a little bit more stable. Now here where I have my cursor, you're going to see some, these are live terns and they are just hunkering down through that whole storm. What was really interesting, and this will become relevant later in my talk, is that none of these birds had laid an egg yet. So they were just holding out through the storm. The operating, here's Dave right here on the left, Dave Brinker. He is the ecologist and biologist for DNR. His specialty is water birds down here. He's been doing it a long, long time, and it's a pleasure to work with him. The operating design elements, we use 2 solar panels right here. And then this box, I call it the rig. There's 3 car batteries in here. It's got a hotspot, a Wi-Fi hotspot, 4 marker lights. So it provides power for 4 cameras right up here. They're in all 4 directions that run 24/7, so we can monitor from afar. We monitor every week anyway, live, but this runs 24/7 and records. Then we have the Wi-Fi hotspot, 4 marker lights, and then a vocal lure during the day to draw the birds in. So we use decoys and lures for broadcast calls. Here on the left is a common tern live trying to talk to decoys quite unsuccessfully. And then here's a little bit of, mating competition here going on. There's a little argument here. This is mating behavior. This is one, again, trying to get the attention of a decoy unsuccessfully. We use a lure during the day at the very beginning of the season, and that is to bring the draw the common terns in. It goes off automatically at night so that we don't draw attention from the mainland, particularly a great horned owl. We don't want a great horned owl to hear those. The common terns call at night, but we don't want to amplify it with a vocal lure. And then we add chick shelters and artificial plants that provides visual separation. This is a great example right here or down here on the left that shows often there's one nest, or it's called a scrape. Here's a better view right here on the bottom left. This is scrape. All they do is make a little bit of an indentation. Sometimes, like up here, a bird will embellish if some debris like flies on near their nesting site. They'll add that to it, especially if they're in a wet side of the raft. They'll often build up a nest a little bit. And some will build them up sort of volcanically too. It's really interesting to see the different variation. But it provides these plants. Often there's a bird on one side and then another nest on the other side of the plants. They like a little bit of separation. And then the chick houses provide shade and protection, especially against something like a great blackback gull or a herring gull. So here's a little, this guy's probably, 3 days old. Same with this guy, about 3 days. This guy's about 4 days old. So material and construction costs, the green big 44,000 is the wheeled dock floats. So if you had a climate that you didn't have to take it out, we use wheels because we take it out in September and then we put it back in April. In fact, we're putting it in on Tuesday. Then you wouldn't need this expense, where these are the floats, the 3 per raft that didn't have the wheels. So there's a pretty significant difference between the two, but we really need that ability to move, to be amphibian. So that was our largest expense. And then the other is that ironwork that we had made. And the Department of Natural Resources paid for that. So we were really happy about that. Here are adaptations that we found we needed as this season went on, and a ramp right here on the bottom left-hand side. This mimics more or less an island. They would be maybe that's a little bit higher island, but all of them have the ability to have a slope. And the reason for that we built this, on the bottom here, there's actually a board down here with a platform with carpet. And that's here in this photo too. So birds, young birds here in the top right-hand corner, these are new birds. These are what you'd consider like a teenager. So they'll start to practice flying, and they may have the muscle strength and development to fly off the raft, but they wouldn't have the ability or the strength yet to fly off the water. Some do, some don't. But for the ones who don't, then they just swim on over to the ramp. Common terns are incredible problem solvers. And so they will go all around that raft and find that ramp and then walk on up the ramp and get back to their parents. So we built also here a mini raft, and this is sort of a little landing pad. So let's say they start to learn how to fly, and sometimes they'll land on this mini raft and just sort of slide into home base kind of thing. It's some of them slide off, some of them land perfectly. So, and it ends up being up here on the top right-hand corner, sort of like a teenage hangout, which is pretty hilarious if you're watching from afar. But just like a normal teenager, they still expect a parent to come and feed them from time to time. So that's pretty funny too. I don't always like to equate human behavior onto birds, but sometimes it's just real right in front of your face and pretty funny and comical to see. So those are the adaptations that we had to build on. And I might even expand this year and make it a really cool teenage hangout spot, So we found that nesting platform launch dates make a difference. This is a small raft. You can see how much smaller it is. In 2021, because of permitting was a little bit slow, we didn't get the platform in until May 4th. And so we probably missed the first group of common terns that were in the area. And we didn't get our first egg until June 23rd. The subsequent years, we got them out April 12th and April 11th, and it made a month difference in when that first egg was dropped. So a month earlier, we got our first eggs, just by changing the launch date for about 3 weeks earlier. So it didn't make a difference. And then this one takes just a moment to understand. In the first year, we banded 19 adult birds. We had 23 nests the first year. We banded 19 adult birds with field readables. That is that band right here that you can actually read. It has 3 digits. If I were to, let me see if I can go back for a minute. Let me see. No, that's not there's a slide somewhere that shows it better. So on one leg, on the right leg, we actually do a USGS band. It's a metal band that's required. And then on the left leg, some are in black, but now we're using white with black lettering. And that's 3 digits, usually 2 letters and a number. That is called field readable, so that you can easily see or read those bands from afar with a pair of binoculars. So we banded 19 the first year, and we had 15 return in 2022. 2021, we banded 19. 2022, almost 80%, 79%, 15 out of the 19 came back. Then that year, we banded 92 more adults. So we had a total for the 2 years of 111. And last year, 88 out of those 111 came back, which is, again, a 79% return rate, which is in the bird world very, very high, very, very successful. The interesting thing too is out of the initial 19, last year, 17 out of those 19 individuals came back for almost 90%. I don't know what happened the year before. Oh, whoa. I wonder how I undo that. Okay. So this year we're putting it in on Tuesday the 9th for 2024. But last year we put it in on the 11th, and our first tern was back by April 15th. So that's how crucial getting the raft in. It's all weather dependent. If the weather next week was like it was this week, we wouldn't be doing it, but it looks much better next week. So it's weather dependent for lots of reasons. Because of all that latching, we have to prioritize safety over everything else, but it looks good for Tuesday. So then every week we monitor. Here on the left, you'll see we do weekly platform visits. We record nest contents. We band adults and chicks. We're looking for colony site fidelity. That's that last chart that we just did. How many of them know where home is? And then I use a lot more. Most of these are my photographs throughout this. And we ended up using my camera a lot more because it really helps. I was able to document that 80% or 79% return rate, which is crucial in understanding. You can build an island and it can look like it has a lot of birds there, but is it producing healthy birds? Is it producing birds that continue to come back? What is really going on? So we take the time to do the science behind it so that we can really speak clearly about what's going on here. So, but down in the bottom right-hand side, here we are collecting probably chicks because we're using paper bags. And then we mark the nest contents. We mark the chicks. We know what nest they're from and what area of the raft. We have northeast, east, southeast. So we can put it back exactly where they belong. And then here we are. Oh, this is the photo I was looking for. So you can see this is 0L3. And so that makes it pretty easy to be able to cite that bird. Here in the middle, top right, I mean, in the middle here is one of the traps we use to trap an adult bird. This guy's pretty content. What he did was, actually, this was pretty funny because that stick should be down. He went in, he sat back down on the fake eggs, but he didn't trip the door, even though the door did trip. Somehow the stick got stuck here. But anyway, he was happy, or she. They both incubate equally, both males and females. They were content because they were sitting on their eggs. Here's a little chick here, and this is an egg tooth. It's called an egg tooth on the bottom, and that's how they break out of their shell. This chick is probably 1 or 2 days old. We use an incubator. Here's with real eggs here that when we're banding a bird, we'll take the real eggs from the nest. We mark the nest, and then we take the real eggs and we put them in an incubator because we're trapping that bird, which means we're removing that bird from its nest. Its other mate may be off feeding somewhere and doesn't know that this mate has been, has been caught and is being measured and banded and then let go. But we want to make sure that these eggs are constantly protected. So until we see another mate return to that nest, one or the other, is when we finally return the real eggs and we take away the dummy eggs. Here is some raft life in the top left-hand corner. That's just some courtship here. Here in the middle, other courtship, you'll see these tails going up like this. This is the only time you'll see this is during courtship. And they sort of rotate around with this display. Often the male will be the one beginning the scrape, and sometimes where you'll see this great photo for this is you'll see that the beak is it'll move away some of the shell so it can make a little concave pattern, and that's the begin of a scrape or a nest. In the top right-hand side, I just included this because this is a bird seldom any of us see on the East Coast at any time. And this is a 1-year-old common tern. You can see an adult has a red bill. This guy has a black bill. And they generally do not come back until they're of breeding age, which is 3 years old. So they live in South America, down in Brazil and Argentina in the winter, and they generally don't come back until they're 3 years old. So I didn't even recognize this bird. I didn't know quite what it was. I thought it was a gull-billed tern, which has a black bill like that. And then sure enough, this guy's just early. He's like 2 years early, just checking things out. And it took him about 4 or 5 days to get accepted into the group, but he did. He was not someone who could mate or breed, but he just liked being part of the colony. Here's a little bit of courtship going on. Here's a mother or father with its 2 chicks, and then again, courtship here. So that's just raft life. And then here's chicks being chicks. So, which is really sweet to see. This one in the top left, it's sort of like these guys are collaborating together. Like you look that way and I'll look this way. This one's trying to get food from a decoy, so it's pretty unsuccessful there. This one thinks that hiding under its parent would be a good tactic. So that was sweet. This guy's just curious down the bottom right-hand side. And then this one right here where I have my pointer is really cute because this is actually 3 chicks. And these are 3 days apart. So a parent will lay an egg day 1, day 2, and day 3. So this is a 3-day-old chick. This is a 2-day-old chick. And this chick right underneath here, it's got its wing across it. It was a really sweet moment. That is 1 day old. So these are 3 chicks from the same nest. A normal clutch size is 2 to 3 eggs. The birds that come back the soonest tend to be probably the most practiced. And so they tend to have 3 eggs per clutch. And then some of the late arrivals later in the season might be new at the hole. It might be their first year where they might have little experience. And they will nest. Sometimes their clutch will just be 1 or 2, mainly 2, sometimes 3. This is a hungry chick here screaming at its parent. And then here are these 2 teenagers again. And what's cute about this photo, I know these birds, and they were actually collected as chicks and put in the same bin. And they ended up having field readable bands that were one band apart, but they were not from the same nest. But because they were in that same bin, I guess they made friendships or something. They hung out together in this corner of the raft for the rest of the season. Like you can hear them talking to one another. Then what's for dinner? So we found some really interesting fish. American sand lance is a big one. Spot, menhaden, Atlantic silverside, again, that's a big one. Bay anchovies, another real big one. And then a sand crab down here. This is probably when it molted, so its shell is not hard. We've seen a flounder and a lizardfish. A lizardfish is about 5 inches long, so that was not going to successfully go down any chick's mouth or an adult for that matter. So that we saw it laying on the raft, but it was a good effort by a parent anyway. So here is this feeding ritual going on here. And then season summaries. So 2021, we had 23 nests. The following year, 2022, we had 155 nests. And in 2023, last year, we had 323 nests, which is pretty remarkable in a 3-year span. Nests hatch, we had 19, 26, and 258. We had chicks fledged 22, 148, and 170. Now this 170 is a little low compared to this number of how many nests we had. And I'm going to get to that in the next slide because we had a storm event that was sad to witness. Down here in this bottom left-hand graph, you're going to see the first year we had 23 nests. In the second year, we had a nice little gradual growth up to 155 nests. And then last year was a completely different year. This you can't see, it depends on if you enlarge it or not, but you could, but this growth here was 1 week, and this almost went up exponentially. So we went out the end of May, and the first week I went out, I had 4 nests. Then I had like 9 2 days later. Then I had 30 some 1 day later. And then I had 90 some another day later. And then by the end of the week, we had 132 nests in the first week of 2023, which that tells you that that site fidelity, do they know where home is? The answer is yes. They like beelined it back from South America. And so that was really remarkable. We were actually pretty shocked by that. We did not get to that 132 where I have my pointer last or the year before until about mid-July. And here we had gotten to 132 in the first week of May. I mean, the last week in May, but it was the first week that they laid eggs. Within 1 week, we had 132 nests. And then by the end of the season, we had 323. Oh. And this was the tragic event we had. So the end of June, June 19th to the 28th, it was 9 days of strong weather, but 3.5 days of just sustained 31-mile-per-hour sustained winds and rain. And it was during what's here on the right is this parent. It's called like a mid-hatch. Right at the peak of that 132 nests I just spoke of that were in the first week, they were all hatching right during this week. It's about a 3-week period for them to start to hatch, and they were mid-hatch. So there's actually 2 chicks under this parent and 1 egg, or they'd have 2 eggs and 1 chick. But that meant that one of the parents had to stay incubating the nest at all times. Now, if this chick was 2 or 3 days, maybe 3 days old, it might start wandering in all the confusion. But so one parent had to stay on the nest, which meant the other parent had to feed everyone itself, the other parent, or they would switch off and then the chicks. And we had the cameras remotely. It was something that I really respect in this bird because they tried so hard. But it was just too much because the water is chaotic, the wind is blowing, you can't see your food in the water. It's just much more difficult circumstances. So this pile on the left is a group of deceased chicks, unfortunately. And when we were able to go out there 9 days later, we ended up having 90 dead chicks on the raft, which was really, really sad. And that was just due to exposure and starvation. We couldn't get out there. The parents couldn't get out there. This would happen in a normal island during any storm, and this happens with all species. It could be ospreys in a nest, it can be great blue herons in a rookery up in a pine tree. They will nest, for example, a great blue heron will nest up really high in pine trees, and during a big storm, those nests can fall out, they can sway. So everyone, just like we do, we don't like storms, well, either do they. So but the good news was we still fledged 170 chicks last year, which was more than the other 2 years too. So we still had a very successful year, and like we had 155, 170. So we've fledged over 350 chicks in just 3 years, which is quite successful. I'm just hoping that there isn't a storm like that again. Here are the chicks growing up. What you'll see here on my cursor, that chick is breaking out of its shell. So that's right, probably 5 minutes old. This one was born the day before. This guy's probably 1 to 2 days old. He's just chilling here, which I thought that was pretty cute. This guy is probably 4 days old. This guy is 6 to 7 days old, starting to get a little plump and fuzzy. This guy's getting into his awkward teenage years. This is probably 8 days, 9 days old, a little bit longer here. And then here we have, again, something like 13 days old, 14. And then this guy's 21 days old. This is when he's going to fledge. He's looking pretty good by now. But see, they go through those awkward stages just like the rest of species. So here we have this shows I'm primarily showing the common tern here. 2021 we had 23, 2022 we went up to 155, and then here in 2023 we're up to 323. So that meant in just 3 years we have recovered over half of the population from 20 years ago. Now, royal terns, which is one of the other endangered species, does not go on this raft. It breeds up on 54th Street on an island called Reedy Island. But I'm going to get to that as well, and that will show that these birds are really struggling. They've had zero success for quite a few years now. So is the nesting platform successful? Yes, but it's more for a temporary nesting habitat. What we really want to do is restore the islands, the sand islands. It's a long-term goal. What we've learned is through engineering that there's a lot of ways that we want to do it a little bit differently now that mimics some of the islands throughout the world that are less prone to erosion just because the way they're naturally designed. So we're going to look at things like that. And then here it is pulled out of the winter. And this debris is just 3 months of 3 months growth, but you can see, so those wheels work, and then we scrape them so they go back to the way they started, and then we store them on land and then put them back in the spring. So this was September when this took place. So for proposed long-term strategy for Maryland is to recover the breeding populations of common terns, which were on our way, royal terns, which is what this photo is all about, and then black skimmers to historical peak levels in Maryland. And the focus is the coastal bays. Here is Reedy Island, and this shows these royal terns. It's the largest breeding colony of laughing gulls, which is this gull with the blackheads everyone's real familiar with, a sort of French fry gull. And then this is the royal tern. This is historically the largest, and it's the largest and only breeding colony of what am I saying? Laughing gulls in the state of Maryland. And so, for example, last year there was 3,000 nesting on this island. And this doesn't show you the full view, but what I'm showing here is here are these royal terns in the middle. These royal terns used to be on the outside edge on beaches of Reedy Island. And now, because the beaches have eroded, they're being pushed into the center here. It's called an ecological trap, where you can see these laughing gulls all around. So not only do species, sometimes there'll be predators towards a knot, like if a chick wanders out or this or that, but it's just too dense in here for them to succeed. They really need their own beach. So this is Reedy Island. The proposed long-term strategy is what I said, and this is a proposal. This is a project proposal on the right here. So we're trying to restore this island. I'm going to go to the left again. Sorry, I hope you're following me. In 1989, this green line showed what Reedy Island once was, the footprint. In the yellow line is the 2007 shoreline. So it really changed from 1989 to 2007. That was just 8 years. It really diminished. And then in 2019, that red line, we're losing more and more and more. So the diagram on the right is a design for rebuilding this island. And you can see these little hooks here. These are sort of headways that are shaped in an arc. And if you look at different islands throughout the world, there's some places where just naturally they have this. Sometimes it can be artificial, it could be rocks or something like that. But a lot of times in, like especially Ireland, Scotland, they'll have these little coves, and these sort of prevent, or they take the water, like on a storm, it will take the wave action. That's the word I'm looking for. And it will spread out that wave action and disperse it. And so they'll come up along here, the water will hit and then go up in the air and sort of disperse out. So it will prevent it from going over into the island. You'll understand this a little bit more in a moment. So here, bottom right, and bottom left, I'm sorry. This is now Reedy Island. And you can see, I took this photo, well, this is a drone photo. And this is this year, current. And you see all this pooling in here. This used to all be marsh. This used to all be marsh. This is a great photo, actually, that shows the erosion here. And so this is where those royal terns were, right here in this water. And you can see that that's not going to be successful. And even the laughing gulls, they're really struggling because that's what they've been reduced to, where they used to have all of this marsh. Then this used to be land here. And then this used to be land. This is reduced to hardly anything. It's hard to tell here, but this is really not nesting habitat. And you'll see that in a moment. Here's another aerial view, and this shows this little bit of beach here, which this year we just finished this project. This is the first phase, and we just added this shell to build up this beach about 1 foot above what's normal. These are called core logs. They are actually coconut that we use just as a backup so that this shell won't wash into the remaining marsh that's there. So that's like right here. And what we're trying to do is we actually added decoys on here and a sound lure for royal terns. So we're trying to get those royal terns from over in this area to move over here. And this is what it looked like on the bottom left-hand side when we were done. And this is the project this morning. So this is today. We experienced the highest tide of 2024 so far. And all of that vegetation that you see in the bottom right, bottom left-hand side was completely covered by water. And that's pretty telling. This is about as bad as it gets. So this is the need. This is where the laughing gulls all in here, and then that island. Here's a laughing gull landing as I speak. Here are the decoys over here. The laughing gulls actually probably won't use this because they don't nest on sand or on shell. They'll go to the vegetation once that high tide recedes, but they're challenged as well. The same storm that affected the common terns, that we lost the common terns, wiped out we had 380 eggs of royal terns that were all together. They all got washed out and pulled together. And then the laughing gulls lost a significant amount of their chicks as well because the island got completely submerged. But here I am back to my tern raft. That was successful and has been. So we're looking to restore the islands. We possibly might make another raft to target another species. Here's my crew here. Here's just some towing, putting together. Here we are putting it together there. And here's a sunset view. And there's a little teenager. He's heading off to South America.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was amazing. I learned a lot. I had not realized that type of restoration, that level of effort was happening right here in Maryland. So
Yeah, thank you. It's a
we
lot of
do,
work. Yeah, but
I can,
it's good work.
and how many people are on your team?
Well, I use my staff at Maryland Coastal Bays. Dave comes down, some different people from DNR come down, they want to volunteer or this or that. Then I have a whole group of volunteers. Sometimes I'll call on like when it gets really crowded for at like that first June event. When we're first banding, I bring down friends who are registered and licensed bird banders from Pennsylvania. I just gather people and say, come on down, then we throw you in kind of thing. But it's a really good, I have a great volunteer team. It's a lot of citizen science who helped us out. We have quite a few professors from Salisbury University who come over. We have, you know, college students. We have just a whole crew because this is a pretty near and dear. Plus, it's successful, which is nice. It's nice to be part of something. We're sort of the cause of the island erosion, with sea level rise. So it's nice to be part of the solution as well.
Sarah has a question. She would like to know I think she's referring to the common terns, if they can make another clutch when the chicks die.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say probably half of the parents did. Maybe the more experienced ones did. They probably, so if they laid 3 eggs the first time, the second time, right after the storm, the amount of birds that were nesting bumped up again. So we knew. Plus, I knew by their identifications that some of them had already nested. But then they'll probably lay just 1 or 2 eggs because the female will have less hormones. But we did have some success of second clutches um, uh, after the storm.
Um, you mentioned that this project was successful. Is it being used as a model for other states?
It is. I just went to the Pacific Seabird um, meeting out in Seattle, and that was really. I've also presented at the Waterbird Society meeting that this year it was in Florida. It moves. Both of those move around every year. But this Pacific Seabird conference, they invited me out there, and it was scientists, just imagine the Pacific from Alaska, Antarctica, South Africa, Egypt, Russia, Japan, everywhere. And every single scientist, and Midway Atoll, where the albatrosses are, every single scientist is dealing with the same thing. Um, that is the big issue, is erosion and erosion of habitat, loss of habitat. Some is even like some species might be just losing habitat because the temperature of the planet is changing. And so trees will grow differently. Where they traditionally have nested might be moving up a mountain or something like that, even in Alaska or wherever. But a lot of the scientists were there from Hawaii, Japan. You can just imagine, an island like Japan or Korea or something that really has a limited space, and they're losing habitat because of sea level rise. So it's happening everywhere. I was on a artificial breeding habitat panel as well, and it was everything from, some people are using use barges. Some people can use something as small as a pontoon boat that, is completely empty, that just has a surface, has some substrate. A lot of the scientists were really surprised of the amount of habitat we created for them. And, they hadn't thought of it, or they hadn't thought of the density that they needed to have. Because the birds really like habitat. So they like the grasses and they like the chick houses. This is the largest one ever done. There's one up in Toronto that's been done, something similar. There's some off of Maine that have been done. The Atlantic is, I mean, we're fortunate here because we have a bay, and that's, even though the climate was quite challenging for those storms and for those chicks last year, you can just imagine what the burden would be if you're on the Pacific. So, but yeah, they were really interested and being invited at a lot of different places to talk about this because this is sort of what we have to do immediately.
Lonnie would like to know what we could do to help your program.
Uh, Thank you. I mean, you're welcome to get in touch with me and see if you ever want to come down and volunteer. Maryland Coastal Bays is a nonprofit. You can always donate to us. We use that for the raft, especially the operation. I use a lot of my team just in payroll. You can, you know, uh, share this information with others. Part of it is I don't think people really understand how immediate the need is for this kind of work. Like, um, sea level rise is happening right now. And as that video showed, like of this morning in that water, it's happening in much greater magnitude than ever before. And I'm talking in the last 3 years compared to 5 years, compared to 10 years, compared to 1 year. We really have to start talking about taking it all very, very seriously.
Put the link to Maryland Coastal Bays in the chat for folks so they can get directly there. And there is a support button on the homepage.
Ah, it's also on marylandcoastalbays.org is staff, and my photo and email is on there too. So you're welcome to reach out to me. So that's great. But yeah, the Maryland Coastal Bays is doing some really nice things for island restoration. We're doing a lot of restoration for land-based erosion as well. We are helping communities shore up we're really fragile. We're the first hit on sea level rise as we're right next to the ocean. So the bays are, or that whole region is at very high risk. So yeah, we got a lot of things going on.
And the birds are just coming, they'll be coming back any day now, or they're coming
Any
back?
day now. So we are putting the raft out on the 9th. That's Tuesday. And then, last year we had our first bird on April 15th. So I've seen only about maybe about 6 royal terns, the ones that are targeting Reedy and going towards that beach we just created. And then the common terns are right behind. We do know they're on the way. We have eBird reports that have shown common terns are heading up the coast. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting, actually. The very beginning of the season is super fun because I get to get those photographs and see who's coming back. And a lot of times I know a bird. I'm like, oh, it's YY9 over there. Like they'll go to the same spot part of the raft, and there's like little neighborhoods and cliques and things like that. So it's always really exciting for me to see the birds coming back, and they're like near and dear to me. I really love these birds.
It's great to get the citizen science reports to see them making their way northward.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Sarah had a comment. This whole thing is heartwarming, and the project was clearly so well thought out, planned, and executed.
Thank you.
And Lloyd says, thanks so much for your energy and well presented report. Good luck with this year's deployment.
Thank you. We do, you can get on our newsletter too, and then we keep an update on the Tern Raft, and also Audubon reports our updates, and then on Maryland Coastal Bays, we have a blog too for the Tern Raft. So you can stay tuned to see how we do this year. There's a bet going on in the office about how many nests we're going to have this year. So,
Forget March Madness. We went like
yeah, right.
April migration, right?
Right.
Um,
That's
Nikki says, I love all of this work and these projects you're doing. I'm really interested in getting involved with this or future projects like this.
oh,
Can,
that's
schmucks like me, volunteer or
yep, yep,
anything available?
yep, yep. Just write me, shoot me an email and touch base and then we can go from there. Yeah. Yeah, I mean to have people who are really wholeheartedly interested are the kind of volunteers I like. I don't even have to work hard to get people, like we're doing the Tern Raft launch on Tuesday. I just put an email out to my crew, who have volunteered in the past and they all bing, 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 because it's fun and it's really nice to do things together from all different agencies. The Department of Forestry helps us with those rollbacks. Lots of guys from DNR come down. We have 5 boats that tow. A lot of the captains, their first mates. So it's super, super fun. And it's just nice to be doing something really positive for, against all the news around climate change that is hard to witness. This is just like a bright light in the midst of it all.
I love this comment. What an amazing result for the price too. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. People don't understand like restoring islands is in the millions of dollars. To be able to do this, it's 108. That's just cost. That doesn't include payroll or anything like that, but it still is very reasonable when it comes to conservation, though it is a lot of manpower, and
yeah.
it takes a lot of effort. Yeah.
But then when you include the volunteer hours and
Yeah.
the dollar
Yeah.
amount that they're contributing,
Yeah. It's
very
it's it is a very economical one. Yeah.
we have another comment that says, thank you for taking the time to give the presentation. I know it's hard for people doing the work to also take the time to communicate it with the public.
Oh, thank you. It's
And
it's really something I like to do. I like to teach. I'm a longtime teacher, so um I think it's important to get the word out.
great. Well, thank you
Thank
again, Kim. I think we're about ready to wrap it up. And thanks everyone for joining us on this Must Learn Thursday. And
Yeah,
hopefully
I
we'll
really
see
want
you
to
in the next one.
I appreciate everyone tuning in and staying with us. Thank you so much. It's really nice to know that people are tuned in. So thank you.